Hey everybody, Jared Jones. Few governors in recent memory are affecting Florida real estate like Governor Ron Desantis, and that's not a knock. This is not all bad, but I am saying there are a lot of local investors in Florida that are very scared right now. Got an email today, I'll tell you this. An investor who's had a house on the market, rented out for several years, has lease on this property signed in the future saying, Jared, I think I need to sell. I think I need to sell this year and right now because Governor Ron DeSantis is being sued by Disney. Disney's threatening to go to the Carolinas and leave, and I'm just sitting here going, what is going on? Now you throw in all these headlines that Governor Ron DeSantis is now discriminating against people from China and not allowing them to own land, and entering into the conversation is Bill HB 1355, now going through the State House of Congress, soon to be law, that says that foreign and particularly hostile countries can no longer buy land in the state of Florida. We're talking about Russia, China, Cuba, Venezuela, Iran, to name a few, North Korea, another. There's a lot to talk about. I'm going to distill down the most important things that you need to know that'll affect your ownership in Florida, not because you're actually from these places, but because of what the bill will then do to the state. I'm going to talk briefly about who this bill will impact and what the ramifications are if you know someone from these countries that own land here now, because there's going to be changes for those folks. Right now, you might be hearing them, people saying it's like Hitler, they have to register their properties and all this kind of stuff. We're gonna dig all the way to the bottom, but first, if you're not subscribed to the channel, please follow us on this journey and hit subscribe as we talk about all things affecting Florida. But if all else, smash the like button as we smash this story right now. Headline after headline calling DeSantis' latest bill discriminatory, and here's the crux of it. The New York Post does a great job of explaining what was going on at that time. Listen to this. Florida Governor Ron DeSantis vowed to crack down from undue influence of rogue states like China and Chinese businesses reportedly buying up large tracts of farmland. DeSantis was asked, listen to this, the National Association of Realtors pushed a report last year that explained that China real estate investors spent $6.1 billion on American real estate over a 12-month period that ended in March in 2022. Now listen to this. Florida was the top spot. It accounted for 24% of all international real estate purchases in the US, while California ranked second. It was a huge slice. More on that article. Foreigners from China, Russia, Iran, North Korea, Cuba, Venezuela, and Syria will be prohibited from buying a property within 20 miles of a military installation or critical infrastructure such as a seaport or wastewater treatment plant. Now, none of this should come as a surprise because Ron DeSantis, at the time he was saying, hey, there is a huge concern with how much foreign investment is going on in the state of Florida. If you walk that back over the past couple of years, the National Association of Realtors was now reporting that there was a huge amount of land buying going on. I'm going to flash some of those articles right here on the screen so you can see the details. But they were calling attention to an alarming rate, single 1 and 2 year spans of all these foreign entities were buying up farmland all across the US. Well, it just so happens that Florida has become the most popular place for those outside entities to purchase land. I had heard myself inside my own industry here in real estate, weird anecdotal stories about people saying, hey, the People's Republic of China, the leadership there, they end up funneling money here, same with Russia, things of that nature. And again, take this for a grain of salt. It's just what it is. But there was these stories that, it's very easy to launder money in purchasing real estate throughout the US, and so it's happening. Even for the Ingram interview in 2022, you will find a quote from Ron DeSantis that says he didn't think any foreigner should buy farmland in America back in 2019. Wait, that was Elizabeth Warren. That's right, Elizabeth Warren back in her last presidential bid said, right now, farmland that is already in foreign ownership, if it were put in one place, is the size of Virginia, and that not only creates a problem for farming communities, but our food security, but also come for threats of safety in the defense of the United States of America. Now, you fast forward to 2021, again, a year before Ron DeSantis, there was all kinds of reports being made. Congress at large, bipartisan, was concerned because a lot of things were kind of, in their words, falling through the cracks. Folks, and here's another story particularly that I can see was kind of like a catalyst. It was kind of like the wick being lit, if you will, with the actual all of Congress and the US level really turning their focus and starting to become very concerned about China. Listen to this. Fufeng Group, a Shandong Chinese-based company that specializes in flavor enhancers and sugar substitutes, recently purchased 300 acres of farmland near Grand Forks, North Dakota, a rural area that's a 90-minute drive close to a US air base, and it wasn't far from the Canadian border. The location of the farmland, which is just down the road from the US Air Force Base that houses sensitive drone technology, as lawmakers on Capitol Hill worried about potential espionage by Beijing. They said, wow, like, we have to know these things. We need to know if foreigners are buying land in these kinds of areas. Couple that with this large balloon incident that we recently had that's supposedly flying over sensitive targets and possibly surveilling us. And Biden says, oh, I'm glad I shot that thing down. You can see there's a huge political situation going on here between the US and China ongoing. Fast forward to 2023, we have this bill. This bill specifically from Desantis has language really curtailing the ability of a foreigner, means person not actually domiciled living here from one of these hostile nations, from buying really close to a military base or what's called a high value target, which I take to mean a power plant or something like that. It's not for anybody of Chinese origin. It means if they don't live here, if you are in China, you're a citizen of China, you're a citizen of one of these other countries, if you own the land near the military base, but you don't live here, then you have to go ahead and report that you own the property and where the property is and so forth. Now, the crux of the Florida bill is this. If you own a property here now, you're going to have to register it. If you're foreign, if you've got one of these properties and it fits this bill, you have to register with the state or face stiff penalties for skipping out on the registration. The ban on buying new properties that are agricultural or near military installations, that's set to take effect July 1st of 2023. The analysis published on Wednesday evening said the bill could have a major impact on property ownership because it would allow the state to seize and sell illegally owned property. So here's the deal, folks, on seize and sell illegally owned property. I reviewed the bill. It's approximately 35 pages in length. All that I can see as far as the state pushing to create real estate commission law to be able to sell the property off is if they buy the property when they shouldn't have. So the law is passed. You live in China and you just randomly buy agricultural land here. You know you're not supposed to. It is the law. That could then force a sale, okay? Or if you live in China and you are the mortgage carrier for a piece of agricultural property, like you gave a loan, right? You're just behind the property on a loan, for instance. And you need to collect, the person stops paying you for the agricultural property and you take the land back because that is your collateral to get your mortgage paid, you still have to sell the property, okay? And if you don't sell the property, a state could force you to sell the property. So if by devise or descent, meaning you inherit this property somehow, after the law goes in effect, you then would be forced to sell the property. Now, perhaps some people from these nations might actually just have a mortgage on a property. Maybe they're the lender and someone else is actually the owner, and that person stops paying them. Well, guess what happens? This person that lives in China has to then take over the property in cases where it's kind of like they're an heir or the property was passed to them or they took it as an act of foreclosure to collect a debt. In those instances where a person takes that property back after the July 1st window, those people again have to register it, but then they have a 2-year period of time where they have to then sell the property back into the open market. Now, the bill also provides that if you're stubborn and you don't do what you're supposed to under the bill, the Real Estate Commission is allowing the state of Florida to take the property and sell it by force. Seize and sell doesn't mean the state takes the money. This just means the state has to send the owner of the money, okay? So they have a process they want to create. Says, hey, look, if you can't have the property, we have the ability to liquidate the property into the market and then send you the cash back. So I don't like the phrase of seize. It's just the asset itself is only seized for the purpose of kind of forcing sale. If you don't register the property alone and follow the law, that alone can be $1,000 a day penalty. You imagine, like, you don't know about this law, you live off in the hills of China somewhere, and all of a sudden you find out that you've got a $300,000 bill and you no longer really own the property anyways because the state actually has a bill larger than the value of the property. Now, I don't watch mainstream media, so I didn't actually know, but this month, a similar bill prohibiting foreigners from buying farmland just went through our Congress. A lot of the Congress debate has been had going back to Nancy Pelosi's actual House of Representatives when she ran the show. Look at this Forbes article back from 2021, which chronicles a problem going back to 2019. Says why a secretive Chinese billionaire bought 140,000 acres of land in Texas. As a result of this individual coming in from China, spending over $100 million on Texas land, thousands of acres, Texas drafts this bill, which becomes law on June 18th, was not precautionary, as direct response to Chinese billionaire who wanted to build a wind farm in southwest Texas. Now listen to this, folks. This is located on the Mexico border and near Laughlin Air Force Base, a training ground for military pilots. In less than 2 years, Sun bought up roughly 140,000 acres through subsidiaries he controls. He set aside 15,000 acres for this and that. The article goes on to cite that he has ties to the Chinese Communist Party. He's hired them. He's had interactions with all these particular party members. The thing is, you can see that there's a chain here where there's concern about buying against borders, against bases, and particularly anything that might impact our dependence on food production or energy production. Now, I'm not saying this as this is affirming the ethics of prohibiting certain people from buying property in the US. I'm not affirming that at all. I'm just saying that I know when I put Ron DeSantis' face on a video, all the haters are going to come out. Just like some of these headlines where they're just denigrating Ron DeSantis, saying his actions are discriminatory, because it's easy to put DeSantis and discrimination in the same headline. But that's not fair when the bill's co-sponsor is a Democrat. And to point out, at the US Congress level, a similar amendment that I just mentioned was approved by over 400 votes for. There was only 26 dissenting votes. This is March 30 of 2023. This is less than a month ago as I'm shooting this video, where the government has come together and finally agreed on something. By Representative Randy Feenstra from Iowa, was just approved in a 407 approved versus 26 down vote, with 223 and 184 Democrats voting in favor. The article goes on to say, simply put, my amendment keeps China far away from our farmland because American farmland belongs to American farmers. We obviously know it's just not about farmland. When you talk about the entire Congress, for better or for worse, there is a US-wide decision that's taking place that says folks that don't live here should not be allowed to absorb a lot of real estate in our country. Additional to note is how many states have already taken action on the topic. Check this out. Legislation introduced in Texas, Florida, Arkansas, several states will prohibit Chinese citizens from buying real estate based on national security concerns. A total of 14 states prohibit or restrict foreign ownership of private agricultural land, from Indiana, Iowa, Kansas, Kentucky, Minnesota, Mississippi, Missouri, Nebraska, North Dakota, Oklahoma, Pennsylvania, South Carolina, South Dakota, and Wisconsin. And at the same time, 9 of these states are considering even greater restrictions. And then you have many of these states also adding more countries, which are also known as what's called hostile nations, which are really largely communist nations. Now, for its impact in our state, I have a feeling there's going to be some sales taking place as a result of this. You're probably going to see some agricultural land purchased. You're probably going to see some property hit the market that's near military installations. I doubt it's going to be a ton, because in all reality, all these folks have to do is register their property and continue on with life. Interesting, there was a professor out of University of Miami Business School who said he doesn't think these restrictions will affect the real estate market. Now, if we ban Latin Americans, we are in trouble, folks. Listen to this. It would be difficult to imagine it's going to make a huge dent in our markets. The professor said it's more than a political statement than anything. And I do agree. I think a lot of this is our government making some statements against some of these other governments. And that's really what this boils down to.